My name is Dr. Adam Winstock. I'm a consultant psychiatrist and also founder of the Global Drug Survey, and we run the biggest drug survey in the world. So Global Drug Survey is an independent organisation, and we run the biggest drug survey in the world. You know, we have more than 100,000 people who take part every year, and we're interested in finding out information that's important to people who use drugs. So we talk about the nice things about drugs, we talk about the risky things about drugs, and the most important thing for us is that we give information back to people so they can use drugs more safely if they choose to use drugs at all. So I guess 4 things. I'll start off with something German. So when you ask different people around the world, what is the thing that would make you think about reducing your drinking? Because a lot of people drink too much. For Germans, after having a serious accident, the most important motivator for getting German people to drink less would be social humiliation. And so what this says to me, for Germany, having a sense of control when you go out and party is really important. And actually that translates into, I think, a lot of German people being pretty sensible when it comes to actually using drugs. So that's a German thing. The second thing I think we've seen is that more and more people buying drugs on the darknet. People are avoiding going to drug dealers, people are using the hidden web, but also using social media, WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram to access drugs. That's a big change. The third big change has been the return of really good quality and high dose MDMA pills. And that's causing more and more problems across Europe as people start taking too much. And more MDMA is not more fun. So we're seeing more people go to emergency departments, and our advice for people is that less MDMA is more fun. So if in doubt, start with a half or a quarter of a pill. It's really important. I think the last thing would be around, there's a shift of who's using novel drugs. So all of the new drugs that you hear about, they're actually not becoming that popular in many countries. And where they're becoming popular is among those people who don't have money, who don't have opportunity. So among the most marginalized and disadvantaged people is where we would see drugs like the synthetic cannabis products. The final thing I would say is that there is obviously a big shift in the way people are using cannabis around the world. But Germany, like most of the Western world, needs to realize the best way of using cannabis is don't use tobacco. That would be the best bit of advice I could give. It's all about having honest conversations. So most governments ban drugs because they're dangerous, and most governments see the only way of reducing drug-related harm is by banning them. That clearly doesn't work. Most people who use drugs use them pretty safely and pretty sensibly. And also they're adults. So talk to people like they're adults. Like, drugs can be dangerous, people know that. What people don't know necessarily are ways of using drugs in a way where they can reduce harm. So I think it's just about going, drugs are illegal, we'd rather you don't use them, they can be risky, but if you're choosing to use them, if you want to use MDMA, don't drink lots of alcohol, don't mix it with Coke, don't use more than 4 or 5 times a year, don't mix pills and powders. If you've got a mental health problem, best lay off it. If you smoke cannabis, don't inhale too deeply, don't mix with tobacco, don't be stoned all the time, you won't do shit with your life. It's about just being honest with people. And if you're with friends, look out for them. The best way of staying safe is to be with the right people who care for you. So I think probably some of the biggest trends have been the decline across Europe in tobacco smoking. I think that's been really interesting. I think a lot of Europe is becoming much more like the UK with an increase in binge drinking. I think that's become a problem. I think that there's been a broadening for the groups of people who use a drug like MDMA. So 2 decades ago, MDMA was a drug you saw on the dance floor. That's not the case now. MDMA, I think, is pervasive in society. But we're also seeing a change in the way people use drugs. So 20 years ago, people would take LSD to have a mystical experience, see little blue elephants fly past their eye. But now we see people using small doses of MDMA or magic mushrooms to enhance creativity and performance. So I think drugs are becoming more diverse in society and we're using them differently. So I think that people's drug using menu is richer now than it's ever been. I think the last decade has been a stimulant-based decade. I think we're now moving into a much more psychedelic, hallucinogenic decade where people are using, both within medicine and recreation, drugs, I think, to enhance an awareness of oneself, to promote growth and spirituality. And I think that those drugs work quite well with the resurgence of MDMA. And I think actually what MDMA has done has kind of, I think, leveled many people into recognizing it's a drug that can do so many different things for different people. Oh shit, I'll have to think of some very cool answer for that. I haven't been here for 3 years. Honestly, I think the Holocaust Museum is fairly mind-blowing.
Maybe you should talk that in.
But it's not a terribly, to be honest, so there isn't a place in Berlin that's my favourite. What I like about Berlin is wandering and getting lost, because actually it's just this weird amalgamation of old and new, and, you know, frantic and reserved. So I like Berlin because it's a good city to get lost in.
Okay, thank you for your...
And don't forget to do the Global Drug Survey, www.globaldrugsurvey.com.